one fact about every character in Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones. And of course we begin with our two lords, Eirika and Ephraim. Eirika is one of only 4 characters in Fire Emblem history who is ambidextrous. The others are Celica and Atlas from Gaiden or Shadows of Valentia and Shirina from Heroes. That also means that Eirika is the only ambidextrous character who's from a mainline game that isn't Gaiden. We can see her use both hands in Sacred Stones itself actually, as her attack animations as a lord have her using her right hand, while those as a great lord showcase her using her left. Her brother Ephraim was the first Fire Emblem lord ever to not use swords at all, and he currently is still only one of 2, the other being Micaiah. Every other lord is capable of using swords by either promotion or reclassing, yet Ephraim is permanently lance-locked. Let's continue down the list of playable units in the order you obtain them, meaning we begin with the greatest knight of Magvel, Seth. Seth is quite literally the first unit we see take to the battlefield, as he dukes it out with Valter before the prologue has even begun. What's interesting though is that this battle does not follow the normal Fire Emblem rules, as when looking at the stats of the two fighters, Valter has 17 speed while Seth has 12, meaning Valter should actually be doubling him, which doesn't happen. Franz has 5 supports in the final game, none of them being the 2 lords, which is quite uncommon for early game units. It was also not always planned this way, as in the pre-released version of Sacred Stones that leaked in 2008, it can be seen in the support conversation viewer that Franz was meant to be able to support with Eirika, which was later cut. We're also looking at supports for Gilliam, although one that did end up in the final game. And it actually ties into Eirika's fact as well, because it's once again about his dominant hand. In his support with Garcia, Gilliam says he is left-handed, yet every single animation shows him using his weapon with his right. Later down the line, Fire Emblem Cypher would depict him using his right hand as well, but Heroes actually brought back left-handed Gilliam, albeit only in his damaged art. Vanessa is the game's first Pegasus Knight, and as we see more often in the series, she has given her steed a name. And while it has happened before and later that characters name their animalistic friends after past Fire Emblem characters, like Cherchi's wyvern Minerva, what has never happened anywhere else is naming one's animal after a character that has yet to appear. And yet it happened here, as Vanessa's Pegasus is called Titania, just like the quite important character from the Tellius titles. Molder is a kind and gentle man, but that he can also be quite forgetful is shown in his support with Cyrene, where he says that he forgot his own birthday. Sure, he has the whole war to think about, but I can still name plenty of Fire Emblem characters who would never let this happen to them. On to the father and son duo, Ross and Garcia. Ross is the only character in Sacred Stones who can be promoted using a total of 3 items. You have the Master Seal, obviously, but also the Ocean Seal to become a pirate and the Hero's Crest to become a fighter. Garcia's final Japanese name is pronounced Garushia, quite close to Garcia, but in earlier builds of the game his name was actually Boruba, which would probably be localized as Reblev. And the reason for that is that in Japanese, Boruba is the name of Velbar from Gaiden reversed. Nami very clearly has short hair, but that isn't reflected in her battle sprites whatsoever. In fact, her sprite as a sniper is simply Louise from Blazing Blade recolored. She and her childhood friend Colm are the only survivors from the destruction of their village of Lark by bandits. This is even referenced in Colm's recruitment dialogue, when he says they don't have a home to return to. And yet, in their paired ending, it is said they do return to their village to start a family, suggesting either they or someone else has rebuilt the village. The reason Arthur decided to become a monk lies in his early childhood years. As explained in his support with Nami, he had lost a toy one day, when a kind monk spent his entire day helping to make Arthur feel better. That touched him and made him decide to follow in his footsteps. His best friend Lute is in a similar position to Nami, and that her short hair isn't always reflected in her sprites. This time around, her mage animations are correct, as are copied from Nino from Blazing Blade. But when promoted to Sage, Lute will suddenly have long hair in her battle animations. Natasha is essential in recruiting fan favorite Joshua, but in the original Japanese version of the game, if she gets in range, Joshua will actually attack and kill Natasha if given the chance. While story accurate, that is what he planned to do before he lost the coin flip after all, one would think the recruitment dialogue would still play out regardless of who started the encounter, which may explain why it was changed for the Western release. Well, that or balancing reasons. Joshua is one of 4 characters from Sacred Stones to make an appearance as a collectible sticker in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Seeing as the other 3 are Eirika, Ephraim and Myr, he's in quite good company, I'd say. It's back to supports when looking at Kyle, whose C support with Cyrene contains a mistake that goes beyond a typo. Here, Kyle calls her Selena, which Cyrene responds to as if he said her name correctly. Together with his fellow knight Ford, the two make up the familiar Cavalier duo, but this wasn't always planned. In the aforementioned pre-release version of the game, Ford was a ranger instead of a cavalier. In Tana's A support with Ephraim, she says Eirika helped her prepare lunch, but it's completely possible to see this support while the siblings are split up. Something similar actually happens with Eirika as well, as in the two princesses B support, Tana is upset that Ines told her to go home. But again, you can obtain this support before you recruit her brother. And speaking of princesses, Tana wasn't always planned to be one. In the pre-release version of the game, Emilia was the princess of Frelia, not Tana, who did exist as a general instead. Ines was also not a sniper at this point, but instead a monk, which I do think suits his final character a lot less than the sniper he ended up becoming. Next up is Garrick, whose solo ending received quite a different tone in the Western release compared to the Japanese one. In English, he continued as a mercenary before things got overwhelming and he disappeared, never to be seen again, leaving his fate quite vague. In Japanese, however, it's worded more as if he took a careless vacation instead, making his disappearance a lot more reassuring. In his group of mercenaries we also find Tethys, who according to Fire Emblem Heroes' popularity contest Choose Your Legends, is the least popular dancer whose game got released overseas, with her highest ranking being a mere 216. Not only does Marissa perform a whole lot better there, she also has potential of being a very unique unit in the GBA Fire Emblem games. Depending on how you promote her, she can become the only female assassin of the 3 GBA titles. Saleh, escort of Myr, has dialogue present in the pre-release version of Sacred Stones that suggests Myr's foster father Morva was supposed to play a bigger role. Where in the final game Saleh is only looking for Myr, in this early version he is looking for a father and daughter both. Whereas Joshua and Myr appeared as a sticker in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, despite not being lords, they didn't return when Super Smash Bros. Ultimate introduced the similar spirits. Instead, the only playable unit from Sacred Stones that isn't a lord to be featured in this title was La Rachelle. And for her 2 bodyguards we have some stat facts. Dosla's growth rates are completely identical to those of Barter from the Blazing Blade, while Renak has his base stats massively increased in the jump from Japanese to the Western release. His resistance is the biggest example. It jumped from a mere 3 to a whopping 11. Ewan is one of the only characters in Fire Emblem who can actually see his weapon proficiency decrease as he is promoted. If he's made a shaman from a pupil, he will completely lose his anima magic proficiency. Tana and Emilia aren't the only characters who had their roles changed from the pre-release version of the game compared to the final product. Cormac was originally going to be in Joshua's place, functioning identical to the eventual Prince of Johanna. Cormac's place as a recruitable Wyvern Rider was taken at this time by an unseen figure by the name of Nate. But as you can probably deduce, Nate ended up cut and Joshua was added instead. Dussel's name comes from the German language and is derived from a river there. You may know it from the city Dusseldorf, the 7th largest city in Germany. And yet, Dussel's name was altered in German and became Junel, probably because Dussel sounds like Dussel, which means fool. Noel has not just the lowest luck stat in Sacred Stones, or the lowest luck on the GBA, Noel has the lowest luck in the entire Fire Emblem series. I mean, he has a base of 0, so good luck getting below that. Myr as well as Morva are dragons of an unexplained and unmentioned kind, presumably different from any other dragons we've seen in the series. This is also reflected in her Dragonstone, which doesn't resemble the other variants on the GBA. During the very first Choose Your Legends, when everyone was votable, Cyrene was the lowest ranking female character in Sacred Stones. She received a mere 2 votes more than Renak, who is the lowest playable character of the game in general. Next, what character is better to bridge the gap between playable and non-playable characters than Orson? He is the first character in Fire Emblem history to permanently leave an army that remains present, so no genealogy of the Holy War-esque events. And deaths don't count either, obviously, we're talking unavoidable. On to the 6 generals of Grado, or 5 really, as we've already covered Dusel. Kellach's name may be hard to pronounce, but it is quite fittingly chosen. His name is Gaelic for war, very appropriate. Rief is a devout follower of Formortiis, and yet, because his class is Bishop, he actually ends up having a skill that increases his damage against monsters, although this doesn't come into practice in the final game of course. Selena's title, or nickname, of Fluorspar finds its origin in the mineral known as fluorite, for which fluorspar is a different term. The title may be chosen because fluorite is often green in color, just like Selena. In Cormac and Dusel's A support, it is implied Walter wasn't always as completely insane as he is in the final game. While never a kind soul or anything, he became drastically more messed up after using a cursed lance that belonged to Dusel's family. And then we have Glenn, the only one of the 6 generals who has never fought nor recruited in Sacred Stones. We have some more villains to go though, like Emperor Vagard. Despite being quite an important character and villain to the story of Sacred Stones, he, or what is left of him, is only fought in the Ephraim route of the game. The same doesn't apply to Lyon, his son, but he too appears differently in the final chapter depending on the route you're playing. In Eirika's route, his portrait shows him as possessed, while in Ephraim's route he looks like his normal self. And speaking of possession, Formortiis is next, although that name is actually never used in dialogue in the Sacred Stones. Formortiis is exclusively referred to as the Demon King. And last but not least, we have 3 more non-playable characters who are on the right side of Magvel history. First of all, the father of our lords, Vado. During the original cutscenes of the game, he appears as a completely unique class known as a peer, which is never again seen in the game. When he would later become playable in the creature campaign part of the game, his class would instead be a general. Ismare, Queen of Johanna, is in a very similar position. When she appears as an NPC in the main story, she belongs to the rare Queen class, but when she later joins as a unit in the creature campaign, she is now a Swordmaster. And finally we have Hayden, father of Innes and Tana. He also appears in the creature campaign, and that makes him unique as he is the only playable character exclusive to this mode who doesn't die during the main story of the game. But if you think being a Fire Emblem dad that stays alive makes him popular, you couldn't be more wrong. In Choose Your Legends, Hayden has consistently been the lowest ranking character in Sacred Stones. His highest vote count is a mere 32. And that has been every character. Have any facts of your own to add? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Fire Emblem content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.